Hi, Armored Pants here, and continuing the Beginner's Guide series, we now have a look at light tanks, or you are the eyes of your team. Um, as I said, this is a beginner's guide. It will cover the essentials, the basics of playing light tanks. It's not all inclusive, so there you will, if you're an experienced player, you will see there's some things missing here, but it does cover the basics. So if you're starting to play light tanks, or simply looking for a refresher if you're having some bad games, I think this will help. So let's talk about light tanks. In my opinion, not the easiest to play for various reasons. Your main job is spotting, your main job is to find the enemy. If you're not doing that, you are not playing light tanks correctly. To do that, you are given some interesting equipment, let's say the right equipment, in order to execute this role, this vital role for your team. You're fast, small, nimble, and agile. Therefore, you own the map. You can get around the map very easily. You have a small caliber gun usually, I mean smaller than the other guns in the game, and you usually have a good rate of fire. So you're well able to put in rounds onto the enemy. You have active camo when moving. Your camouflage is active when you move. No other tank type has this. Normally when you move, you break camo. It has a better view range normally and better camo numbers, so therefore you can stay concealed longer and better. You see further with this view range, and you're hidden longer, which is basically key assets when you're trying to spot the enemy, right? So you're given this toolbox, but you have little or no armor, and you are therefore prone to huge alpha rolls. You will be a HE shell magnet, and you can often be a one shot, in which case your game is over. Therefore, that's why it's so difficult to play. It's not easy to play. If you don't play it right, you can be eliminated from the game very quickly. So you have an interesting bag of tricks, but how to use them? What should you do? So let's have a look at what is a light tank's role within the game. And I'm going to simplify this and tell you my philosophy on it, so you can disagree. But this is my philosophy on what a light tank is and what it should do. That is the philosophy of Armored Pants. So you are essentially the eyes of your team. That's it. Your primary role is to spot the enemy. If you're not doing that, you are not doing your job. And if you don't do it, you leave your team blindfolded. They cannot see the enemy, and they have a huge disadvantage. So therefore, it's like trying to play chess with pieces missing. It's like trying to fight with one arm tied behind your back, or being blindfolded as the guy in the picture is. So therefore, your role is essential, because if you do not do your job, if you sit back, don't move, your team will have a huge disadvantage. So if you put those eyes onto a pair of tracks, you are essentially a light tank. Combining eyes with a pair of tracks is a light tank. That's it. If you keep this analogy in mind, it will keep you honest, keep you a team player, and show you what you should do. Let's have a look at a map. Let's take any standard map. They're all basically the same with different channels you can drive down, different spotting positions, etc. For argument's sake, we can assume this is dead rail, for example, right? So you've got the rail in the middle, the valley on the right hand side, the hill on the left hand side. You start your light tank in this position, okay? But again, it doesn't really matter what map it is. Your job is to move as quickly as possible into a position on that map where you can spot the enemy. So therefore you need to move right from the game start into that position to get to that position, ideally before the enemy does. Once you're in that position, you should open up view range, fields of view across the map, like you see here. You have in some cases up to 300 meters view range. You can see right across the map, and the purpose of this is to spot the enemy. And therefore relay their positions back to your team. So in this case, you've spotted up one of their light or medium tanks, one of their tank destroyers, another medium tank moving up in the center of the map, perhaps through the town on dead rail, another tank destroyer over in the corner, and heavy tanks moving down to seize that pass at the bottom of the valley on dead rail. But of course, this could be any map, but we're just using this for illustrative purposes. Once you've spotted them, your team can see them, your team remains unseen, and they can fire onto those enemy tanks like this. Therefore, you have given your team a huge advantage. Now, I cannot overestimate how important this is, because your team is unseen, unspotted. They are not receiving fire, and the enemy team is receiving fire. So let's have a look at this in action. Let's see this in actual gameplay, how this works out. Here I am, VK2801, really fast light tank. I go hell for leather. Like as we discussed in Dead Rail, there are positions on every map where you can spot. I'm going to this position here, this hill left of the base on the left hand side as I spawn, and I go into that position and I move forward and bam, spotted one up, put a round into him. Back, I've spotted up the Leo here. My team are firing into him, I fire into him and my team clear him. So there you see, in the space of just those few seconds at the start of the game, so not even 30 seconds into the game, I have spotted up, put in fire, and my teammates have been able to fire into a Leo from unseen positions and clear that Leo. Not only do we clear an enemy tank, but we also clear their light tank, their eyes. Now, how is this important? I've discussed game philosophy before. If we look here, this is the total hit pool point of your team. The red is the total hit pool point of the red team. Therefore, you have more or less equal, of course it's not always equal, but more or less equal chances of winning, right? Ceteris paribus, all things being equal, you both have a 50% chance of winning before the game starts. Now, if we think about the example that we've just seen, where I've spotted up the enemy, and my team has been able to fire in and remove that tank, or even if he wasn't removed, seriously damage him. We have reduced the total hit pool point of the enemy team, and we have swung the odds of winning into our favour. It's now, let's say, 60% in our favour of winning against 40% for them. That doesn't mean, of course, we will win, and you often know you have bad starts and still win games, but you have swung the percentage odds of winning in your favour by those actions. And that's why it is so important for a light tank to do its job. We've seen that this is essential, and we've seen in that small clip how it works. Now let's look at the game philosophy in action again. Here I am again, VK2801. It's one of my favourite light tanks, I love it. And I decide to go hell for leather because I want to spot up their medium and light tanks and relay those positions back to my teammates who are pushing up on the right hand side. One spotted. I'm spotted too, but I don't mind because I am so fast it's going to be difficult for me to hit me. It's two spotted. A third spotted here on the left. Now I am moving across to engage because these two guys think that they're fighting by my own. What they haven't realised is that I've spotted them up before my teammates, and you can see that they're receiving fire not just from me but from my teammates as well. I don't mind taking a few hits here because I know that we're going to clear those two tanks and we're going to remove the eyes of the enemy team. So here we are into the game, not even 1 minute into the game, and we have cleared the Leo and cleared the T-34-85. So they're both gone and we've just passed 1 minute into the game. So I have created exactly the scenario that we discussed, maybe even better because we removed two tanks. It might even be 65 or 70% in favour of us winning now. So we see that this is exactly the scenario that we discussed in game philosophy in action in the game. Now, that all sounds great, right? But of course you have to do that while staying safe. There's no point in you driving up, spotting the enemy, getting two HE rounds and being removed. So how do you do this safely? What are the tactics and tools that allow you to do this? How do you even get spotted but still remain safe? Let's look at view range and camo in effect and see how these tools that you're given help. So as we said earlier, light tanks usually have a significantly better view range than other types of tanks. So let's say in this case we have a 290 meter view range. When the heavy tank pops into that, within 290 the light bulb goes off and we've spotted him. Does he spot us? Well, probably not, because the heavy tank's view range is significantly less. Let's look at this in action, and this creates a safety margin. So again, here we are, 290 meters, we spot up the heavy tank. Now his view range, let's for argument's sake say it's 258 meters. The delta the 32-meter difference between 258 and 290 is the safety range of the light tank. Once staying in that, he will not spot us unless we break camo, and we'll discuss breaking camo in a second. But therefore we can remain unspotted and spot him up with no danger. The delta that we see here in the green is the safety margin, in this case 32 meters, where we remain unseen. And this is significant. Now, let us look at the effects of camo. Let's say normally camo has 3 or 4% camouflage effect. So what does that mean if we use camouflage? And which, by the way, if you're playing a light tank, you should always use camouflage. But in effect, it reduces his view range by 4%. So now it's actually 247 meters, not the 258 as before. And therefore, it increases the safety margin that we have. It is now 43 meters rather than 32 before, so we have a bigger safety margin. That's why you should always use camouflage. Now, what breaks camo? Well, moving breaks camo, unless you're a light tank. Light tanks have active camo when they move, and that's very important. If you fire, it breaks camo, and if you move your tracks, it breaks camo. Not if you're a light tank, but for example, if you're a TD, if you move your tracks, you've often wondered why you get spotted. That's why. But camouflage resets. It takes 10.9 seconds, which you can count out 1,1000, 2,1000, etc. So this is important to know when you want to stay safe. If you want to fire into the enemy, you fire, you break camo, move back into cover where you're unseen, count out to 10.9 seconds, it resets, and you're safe. Important to note if you don't already know this. Now, light tank role in the end game. We've seen this slide before in the heavy tank tutorial. Let's say this is the heavy tanks from both sides have engaged at a strategic position on the right hand side of the map. Your job in a light tank towards the end of the game is to come around behind and to take out enemy tanks, for example tank destroyers, which are stopping the movement of your team forward, or if they've already been removed, flanking around to take out the enemy tanks from behind. And so this is sort of your role in the end game. In supremacy games, this may also involve base capture. Because you're so fast, you're able to move around the map and capture them. Now at the start, don't just sit in a space waiting to get killed. Rather scout it out, because you're a big target. Scout it out, see if it's safe to move in. But later on, you should use your speed, after all the enemy is spotted, you know where they are, to capture them. And that can be the difference between winning and losing a supremacy game. So bear that in mind. The speed of your tank can make the difference between winning or losing a supremacy game. Now, let's have a look at the end game in play, what a light tank should do. We're going back to the game that we looked at earlier, and now we're going to look at the end game. So this is what we call the mopping up, where we come in from behind, take out the tank destroyers as we do here. I have another light tank with me. Now we're coming in behind the enemy tanks, exactly as we discussed in the slides. This is this strategy, these tactics in actual gameplay. Now we are in the safest part of the KV2 behind it when its gun is facing the opposite way. We're easily able to put in rounds onto him. And he is engaged with our heavy tanks in front. We come in and we put all sorts of damage into him. Myself and my other light tank compatriot clear him up. Now we've met with our heavy tanks who were engaged at that strategic choke point with the enemy, as we discussed. And there's 1 minute of mayhem that we're looking at here. Beautiful light tank play. We come in and we mop up the entire enemy. And that whole game lasted 2 minutes. That is the devastating effect of light tanks when played properly. Now let's look at a whole game with all the lessons that we've looked at included within it. And it's me in a Leopard, another fantastic light tank, in a supremacy game where I'm up tiered. And firstly what I'm going to do is I'm going to spot up the enemy, I'm going to scout out the base rather than just go and sit in it. And then we're going to engage the enemy, but I'm going to do so safely. So firstly, I go hell for leather to a strategic point in the map where I can spot the enemy from my teammate. So here I go, I'm much faster than even the other medium tanks, and I am going up onto the hill here on the right hand side to this strategic point, as I said, to spot up the enemy. Now up I go, and there we go, one spotted. I'm going to put a couple of rounds into him because I can, because he doesn't know where I am, and then I roll back into safety. Job done. Spotted up the enemy tanks for my team. Didn't receive any hits, and I actually put a little bit of damage into one of their tanks. Now I am keeping myself safe. I have reset camo, and now I can pop out and put some rounds in again, this time into Panzer IV-S. And the beauty is that my team know where he is now, and they can put rounds into him too and support me. Now, I did not make the mistake of just driving straight into the base without spotting up and getting blasted, because there was 3 tanks there that could have easily removed me from the game. But no, what we've done is we have spotted up the enemy, scouted out the base, remained safe, firing, moving back into safety, so there's no shots on me, and I'm putting in significant damage here, as you can see, onto the enemy tanks. And also I'm creating opening up different fields of fire on them so that they can't concentrate their fire on one spot. So you see the Panzer IV wanted to go one way, then he goes another way, then he is moving his gun around, and he's not actually making any damage onto our team. Now I'm using the hill to remain safe, and then I'm going to clear this Panzer IV-S. That's done, and now I'm going to use the speed of my tank. And as I said, one of the assets of a light tank is its speed, to come across behind these guys, fire, and then get into cover again. Now I'm in behind them, I'm in cover. I just use the speed of the tank to get around behind them, no danger to me. Now we're going to come in and we're going to clear him. And then what we're going to see is, after my ally clears him, we're going to see me in Circle of Death. Now, Circle of Death is something which is an essential light tank skill. And there are many videos on it, and many people will tell you to do lots of different things. But to me, Circle of Death is very simple. All you need to do is, there's just one golden lesson. Keep his gun facing away from you. Once you do that, you will be successful. Just keep that simple rule. You don't have to make it any more complicated. So we look at it here again in slow motion. I do take one round, but I'm quite prepared to do that because I haven't been hit before. And I use the speed of my tank to keep his gun away from me while I put rounds in on him. Now, you'll notice here that I am not zoomed in when I'm doing Circle of Death. So please note that this is essential when you are doing Circle of Death. Now, you can zoom in for one specific shot, as you will see me doing here. But when you're doing Circle of Death, you need to remain zoomed out. Why? There's 2 reasons. Firstly, you cannot see where his gun is. For example, you see here I'm zoomed in to fire into his back. You cannot see where his gun is when you're zoomed in, right? Now, I knew where his gun was before I zoomed in. So you can zoom in for specific shots. But don't be zoomed in all the time, because the other reason is, not only can you not know where his gun is, you will drive into things, rocks, other tanks, etc. You'll get stopped, and if you're circling down something like a cave 2, you drive into a rock and stop, and he gets a shot on you, then it is game over. So now, as we discussed, another key role later on in the game, middle to end game, is base capture, which is what I'm doing here, playing the role very well. So again, another lesson that we learned in the tutorial in play here. Now I'm able to put in a round on him. Don't really do much pen because he has very thick armor. But now I'm going to sweep around behind and do the mop up, as we discussed, as we saw in tutorials. Coming around in behind to do the mop up, not going head on. You should never go head on into a brawl or a fight in a light tank. You don't have the armor or the pen for it. But what you should do is what I'm doing here. Coming around behind. Again, this is the safest part of the cave. You want the back of it. Put some damage into him, and now I use the speed of the tank to go by him, make it difficult for him to get a shot on. And look at this here, look at this bounce from him, hits the corner of the tank. And the reason he does that is because I'm moving so fast. I've put him under pressure. He fluffs a shot, and the speed of the tank keeps me safe. And it's simple, just mopping up exercise. Roll backwards, away from his gun, job done. Now we'll continue the mopping up, but I'm going to capture the base first. Again, I have the speed. I also have fast capture trained, so I can capture this base very quickly, and then I can continue the mopping up. We go around to take out the VK3601, a very tough customer, but again, I'm going to do Circle of Death. Again, our lessons of Circle of Death: just keep his gun away from you, don't have to do anything else. Don't zoom in unless you're actually taking a shot, as I do here for the kill shot. Simple, light tank play, all the lessons that we looked at. Spotting up, scouting out, using your speed to stay safe and to do damage, capturing bases when it's safe to do so, coming in behind, mopping up the enemy. So there you see, that is more or less how to play light tanks, all exemplified in one game. You see here the spotting that I've done on the VK, on the Panzer IV, Panzer IVS. We have done damage then, we've base captured, we've done basically everything that a light tank should do. And even when up tiered, you can see how effective it can be when played properly, and that delivers the mastery badge because we did all the activities that a light tank should do. Now, let's have a look at the second game. It's very difficult to say that there is a perfect game of Blitz, but in my opinion, this is certainly the most perfect light tank game I've ever played, because it encompasses everything that one should do in a light tank in one game, even more so than the game we just looked at. Now, originally I'm going to go for A, but then as I move forward, I'm going to scout out B on the way. I spot up the enemy, and then I change my tactics. So I move forward very quickly. I'm going towards B to spot that on my way to A. As I move forward though, I'm spotting up the enemy. So I spot them up now. You'll see them popping up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is spotting 101. I mean, I've just spotted up half the enemy team already. 5, a fifth one popped up. 6, I've spotted them all now. So my teammates know where all the enemy are. Also, because I know where they are, I know it's safe to capture D. I can do so without any danger because I know the enemy is way behind on the other side of the map. They're way behind C. So that's the beauty of spotting. Not only have I relayed the position to my teammates so that they can put on fire or move safely, I have also made a safe capture. Now, no way, Jose. As we said earlier, you do not face off to heavy enemy tanks like that AT-8 or that KV-1S in a light tank. That is not your job, and if you're doing that, you will die and you're not playing a light tank correctly. Rather, I come in here, use the speed of the tank to get around. I'm going to take out this M4. I will take a hit, but I'm quite happy to do that because I'm going to clear him. And once I clear him, I know then that it's easy for me to take out the rest of the enemy team because I will remain unspotted. Now I'm going to engage the AT-8 and I'm going to engage the KV-1S, but I'm going to do so on light tank terms. That is, I'm going to come in from behind. This is how we should engage the enemy in a light tank. We are not knights coming in, fighting fair, chivalry. No. This is how we play. We come in from behind, the silent assassin. So I'm doing two jobs here. I'm doing base capture and I'm damaging him. You may wonder why I keep tracking him. It's because I don't want him to move forward on my ally. That's why I'm trying to track him to keep him in place, because as long as he can't move forward, he is vulnerable on the sides, and I want to keep him in place and not allow him to push forward on my ally so that he can inflict damage using that huge frontal armor and rapid firing gun. Again, track him again, knock down. Now I'm going to clear the KV-1S. Now I can move forward and engage the AT-8. The AT-8 is a tough customer, but if you play a light tank correctly, he does not stand a chance. So here we go. Now I'm coming in from behind. And by the way, this is something I always do in a tank with no turret. Nothing fancy, just park behind him. There's nothing he can do. He's not going anywhere. He can't escape, he's too slow. He can't turn because you're blocking his movement. So that's it, just park behind him and just put rounds into him to your heart's content. If you have adrenaline, drop it. Now it's a mopping up job. It's 3v3, but because of the speed of my tank, I can come in and mop up these heavies and this tank destroyer. I use the round that never expires, the ram. You have some frontal armor, a little bit of frontal armor on the VK28. Now I dropped the adrenaline. I'm going to clear the SU-100. 6 kills, mopping up. Now just one left. Load up the APCR because I don't want any bounces on this other KV-1S. Come across, use the speed of the tank, pre-aim the gun, and bam, game over. So there we go. Less than 4 minutes of play, 7 kills, the entire enemy spotted, wiped out, 2 base captures. Pretty much, as I said, perhaps the most perfect light tank game I've ever played. Significant carry from me, 7 kills, a Resonate medal, and really it was just exemplifies all the lessons of light tank play that we looked at. Moving off quickly, spotting up the enemy. And see here as we look that I've spotted up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the enemy team, all spotted by me, all their positions relayed back to the enemy, back to our allies. You see there, got the mastery badge, Top Gun, the Resonate Heroes medal, and of course the Scout badge. And that's what you should be aiming for, really, even more so than mastery badges in a light tank. Getting your scouting badge, getting your Confederate badge, because that means you are doing your job correctly. You are playing a light tank to perfection. Now, let's have a recap of all the lessons that we've looked at, the key points of playing a light tank. So let's summarize. So, you are the eyes, and it is a vital role in your team. If you do not do it, your team will suffer and probably you will not win. You need to spot the enemy. That's why you are in a light tank. If you are not spotting the enemy, again, I can't emphasize it enough, you're not doing your job. This is essential to winning. If you don't spot, you lose. 9 times out of 10, you lose. And it goes back to the game philosophy we looked at. Your first 30 seconds in the game are key. You saw that in the examples we looked at Fort Despair, Desert Sands. You saw how important it is. If you don't use those first 30 seconds, well, you hand the advantage to the enemy. Game philosophy, you hold the key to swinging the advantage of the game to your team's favour in the early part of the game. You need to stay safe though, be clever. Don't just spot everybody, sit there on a hill and wait to get a HE round into you that's going to kill you. You need to spot, move back into cover. Circle of Death, just the one golden rule I told you, keep his gun away from you. That's all you have to remember. But don't be zoomed in unless you're making a specific shot. But you know, the golden rule is keep the gun away. That's all you need to know. If his gun is not facing you, he can't damage you. And just to recap, you should spot, you should direct fire, you should mop up, and that is the light tank mantra. That's your job. And of course, later on in the game, if you're playing Supremacy, you should capture if possible. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. Cheers, Mush. Pants out.